Hello, and welcome to mentorDINO. I'm your host, Caitlin Rossier. I am an architect and founder of mentorDINO. I firmly believe that architecture, engineering, and construction professionals can achieve true success by embracing human skills as their guiding principle. So each week, I interview amazing professionals in and around the AEC industry as a way to share stories, inspiration, and advice for others finding their own unique career path. Thank you to all of our current subscribers, and if you're new, we'd love to have you join our community. So if you like this episode, please do me a favor and hit subscribe, like, or leave a comment below. It really helps others be able to discover this resource and support them on their own career journey. So let's dive in. I really hope you enjoy this conversation. Welcome to the mentorDINO podcast. I would like to welcome Derwin Broughton, Architect, Vice President at KAI Enterprises, and the 2024 TxA President in Dallas, Texas. Thank you so much, Derwin, for taking the time to speak with me today.
It was a pleasure being here. Thank you for the invitation.
So I always start out with my loaded question, if you don't mind introducing yourself a little bit more and letting my listeners know a little bit about your experience and journey so far in career and education.
Sure. So Derwin Broughton, I am a licensed architect in the state of Texas and several others as well. But I started my journey actually at Clemson University is where I earned my undergraduate degree, graduated there in 2000, and had the opportunity to move to Texas upon graduation. I got hired by a small municipal design firm and stayed there for about a year and a half. Unfortunately, it was during the time of 9/11, and I was one of the last individuals in, first individuals out at the 9/11 as some of the work dried out. But it also afforded an opportunity for me to really move and pivot into a new opportunity. I found employment within a month. Landed at another firm, Ron Hobbs Architects. Ron was a great mentor for me for 11 years, stayed there, really accelerated my career. And that's really when I started really getting involved with NOMA and with AIA, with TxA. And I was recruited away from Ron, great mentor. We continue to visit with Ron. He continues to be a part of my journey and moved to KAI, and I've been there for now just at 13 years. Again, been able to grow into position as now serving as a principal and vice president with the firm, primarily focused upon business development, this particular part of my journey as well. And so that's the sort of Cliff Notes version of it. I can go into much more detail, but that's the highlights from it.
Yeah. So what type of work were you doing between those two firms?
Yeah. So like I mentioned, I started off, and my passion has always been public safety in municipalities. And I still do that type of work, but all my work has always been with public sector clients. And so I started off with public safety, city halls, libraries, and then moved over to Ron and did more of that work when I moved over there, and did also some churches and ecclesiastical work. But when I moved over to KAI, I started doing K through 12, started doing a lot of transit work. And it's not transit from what most architects think, from transit from aviation, which I do some of that as well, but it was light rail, commuter rail, bus rapid transit, advanced rapid transit, which are passion projects I enjoy working on, and then healthcare. So it's all public sector clients, and really instill into our staff how to work with those types of clients and really how to transform communities through the work that we do in those particular municipalities and communities.
Yeah, for the transit one, I guess I more think of engineers whenever it's the transit, but I'm assuming you were helping more with like the canopy structure, or were you also helping the planning of like new?
And so it's interesting. I tell people, when we work on those projects, it's a big E, little A, right? We're working with the large engineering firms on the projects, and we're doing mostly the station design and really the urban connectivity. There's no other type of project you work on where I'm working within a 10-foot by 60-foot box, basically, in which we spend the amount of time really understanding how do you plan for human protection, shade, shelter. How do you plan for safety? And it's it's interesting work because you get the time to really do the things that you studied in school and at a very deep level to make sure that those passengers have the best experience. So it's pretty fascinating. People think it's boring, but it's actually pretty fascinating.
Yeah, because I haven't ever worked on that type of work before. So it's, if you always do that type of work in school or even just leading up to like the project scope, and you're doing so much leading up to a site that oftentimes we just jump right to the project when you're in the profession and just think of the nucleus and maybe the immediate adjacent neighborhood. But the immediate adjacent neighborhood, when it comes to transit, is a lot of neighborhoods.
It is. And it's that first and last mile connectivity. So yes, we want to get them on the bus, we want to get them on the train, but how do we get them to their final destination from there? And then when they get back to the station, what is their wait like when they're there? Mm-hmm. It's really about that passenger delight. And as was another peer of mine came up with that word, but really passenger delight. How do you make sure that those passengers have a wonderful experience from end to end?
Yeah, definitely. And how did you figure out your passion for the public sector? Because I know so many professionals, they come out of school just trying to figure out what types of projects do they want to work on. And they keep getting told, find your niche or find your passion. So how did you kind of come up with that for yourself?
Yeah, I grew up in South Carolina, and, coming from the historic South, as you can imagine, there were a number of issues that I saw my parents and my grandparents work through. And my grandfather was a concrete foreman. He traveled all over the U.S. working on highways and airports, doing concrete work. And, I learned from him and I watched him, but I also watched him be involved in his community and how he made a change in his community. I saw the same thing with my dad. So I gravitated to that because I saw where I could really make an effective change, not only through my volunteer work, but also through my physical work and through my employment to really transform communities. And, even though we may be hired by a city, we may be hired by a hospital, my end user or my end client is always the person that's going to occupy that building day one. And that's where we look at it, is how do we impact people's lives through the built environment? And so, the architecture has to be wonderful and great, but how does he make it to make sure that it's practical for these individuals? And, when you walk in first that day one, when the facility opens and you see the wonder in people that, you got it right and it was up and beyond my expectations, and that continues to live on for years and years to come, you know that you're doing great work. And I'm not saying I'm not patting ourselves on the back. It's just when you get it right, you get it right.
Yeah, because you can have a great design, but if it doesn't function right, then nobody's going to want to use the space. But when you can balance that function, use, and adaptability for decades to come, and the beautiful architecture is just part of it, then it's a huge impact. So, and I know you've had a majority of your career at 2 firms. And so do you have any advice for those that may love their firm but are looking for opportunities to grow and advance in their career rather than other people advising on, hey, jump around and find your fit?
Yeah, and I'm going to look at it through 2 different lenses. So because I also do influence some of the hiring at our firm now, I don't necessarily hire people, I do influence it. And one of the things I realized that this current generation is that sometimes people don't stay at firms the way that, my generation or your generation before stayed, where we would stay 10, 15, 20, 30 years at one firm. People do move around, but I think there is something to be said about individuals that find a firm that's a good cultural fit for them, and they're able to grow and contribute to that firm and see that firm grow around them as well, and to build teams around them. I think there's power in that, and it says a lot. For me, being on the business development side, it says a lot when I go in for an interview and I can say that my team's been with me for 10 years. I mean, that speaks magnitudes to the client. But it also gives me the opportunity not only to learn from those individuals that have planted the roots in those firms and grown those firms, but it allows me to plant roots in people long term as well that are below and besides me as well. And so there's a lot of opportunity with being resilient but also you have to find the right fit. So I'm not saying be resilient in some place you're going to be miserable in, but find the right fit. And if you can stick around, stick around.
Yeah, because I know when you talk to people outside of architecture and they're on the business side, and, I see my little brother hopping around a bunch, but I'm like, you're in finance. It's different. Like a architecture project takes a while. If you hop around so much, I always question, have you seen a project from start to finish?
Correct.
At a minimum, let alone if it's the right fit. Do you have any advice that you give professionals to help them find that right fit?
I mean, it has to work for you. I mean, it has to work for your family. I mean, as far as do the work hours work with your family? Do you understand that you have kids? Do you understand that you need some flexibility? Do you understand that you want to grow in a profession? You don't want to necessarily stay as a technical architect. You want to move into some other aspects of the business. Like, are they working with you? And do you have the skill sets to move to where you want to go and do and help them achieve what they need to achieve? And is reciprocal in fashion that you able to get the things you want through relationship or through your employment as well. So it has to be mutual from both sides. So that mutuality has to be sought and it has to be supported. So if it's not supported, like your aspirations may not match up with the aspirations of your company. So you got to figure out whether or not you want to stay or not. But that's a decision that you need to make for yourself.
Yeah, because I know if you don't have that alignment, then it can be a rough go, because then you just feel misaligned the whole time, and then you're not leading up to what you want to be as a professional, and also not fair to the business either. But it's always hard to find that right fit, which always makes it hard to, especially get a career started. I always give people the advice, once you've been at one firm, you learn a lot about yourself.
Yeah.
To what that fit is, and people's fit changes over time. You right out of school is probably very different than you 10 years in versus today.
Yeah.
So
I would also say when we look at resumes, there's a big difference between we see somebody that's jumped around from firm to firm every 3 years and somebody that's moved every 5 to 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like a subtle thing, but it's a big thing.
Yeah, because you're investing time and energy to train and build them up. So it can be hard.
Exactly.
How was it for you when you transitioned from kind of being in the weeds on projects to transitioning to the business development side?
I struggled with it because I've always been a doer seller, if you're familiar with that term.
Yep.
So I would go out there and help to win clients, to also do the work. And for those that aren't familiar with the term, it came an opportunity where my boss needed to focus his time elsewhere with the business, and he needed to shore up the business development side. So it was a natural migration for me to move over and to support him on that. But I struggled because I questioned to myself whether or not I'm still an architect on the BD side. And I struggled with that for a number of years. And honestly, it was to my detriment because I was still metal. I was still metal in projects where I probably didn't need to metal in. But I found my place in that I still can be involved in projects. And it's my responsibility from the business development side, because I spend a lot of time with our clients, cultivating relationships. And it's a marriage, right? When you develop a relationship with a new client, and in that marriage, there's promises and there's things that are said that we have the responsibility to uphold those things that we sold them on. And so what I found is I really stay on board with my projects during the programming and schematic design phases, and it's my responsibility to instill within my team the things that I promise to the client, and that their visions and their aspirations are captured in those programming and those schematic design documents so that the team can own that and move forward with it. And so to the degree, I am still an architect. I just do it in a different way. I'm not doing the technical drawings, but I'm still helping to program and deliver on what our clients desire to have. So I'm still part of the process. And that's the way I've sort of stayed connected. And also I do some soft mentoring. I've always been passionate about details. And so if I have a team member that needs a little bit of mentoring, coaching on that, I'm always available for that. So it's still, there's ways for me to still be connected to what we think is, traditional architecture, but there's different facets of being an architect that sometimes we don't acknowledge.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for somebody that may be currently struggling with that transition and letting go? Was there any advice you got through that process?
Yeah, I think a couple of things that some of the individuals around me and mentors around me shared with me is that, if you're going to move forward in this profession, you have to coach and teach the person beside you or alongside you to replace yourself. So you got to be able to pour in them everything that you know so that you can move on to that next position or a new role in your career and let them move into the position you're currently in. So being open and receptive to sharing and not holding them back from being as great or better than you are at what you're currently doing.
Yeah. I know when I train people, I always want them to be better than who I am. Because we're always learning. We're never going to be experts at everything. And,
exactly.
And also teach them that I don't know everything. If I don't know something, I'll help them figure it out with them, because then it's an opportunity for me to still learn.
Exactly.
And I know you touched on mentoring. So how has mentorship impacted your career?
I'm a firm believer in mentorship. So I've always believed that you should always have somebody ahead of you, someone beside you, and someone alongside you as your mentor. And those may be multiple people. And I have multiple mentors, and the mentors changed throughout my entire career. So, they're there for a reason. They're there for a season. Mm-hmm. Some of them are long term, some of them are short term. But it's extremely important to have others that are pouring into you, and then those that you're pouring into others as well. We learn by osmosis and just being around people and talking to people. And sometimes there's things within your firm that you can't talk to someone within your firm about. So you need those mentors in the industry, outside the industry. I have people outside of architecture that I would say are my mentors and coaches because they know how to do business and they know how to do business well. And so I learn from other industries as well. And I take those lessons learned from manufacturing or from whatever, as far as, process improvement, and apply that to architecture and to our work, and it makes us better people. It makes us better architects. It makes us better designers. So,
yeah,
it's big for me.
Yeah, and I know this will lead into all of your organizations, but I know I always try to tell professionals when they're trying to get going and get started, try to find some type of organization. It doesn't have to be the AIA. It could be NOMA. It could be a Women in Architecture. It could just be something outside of architecture. But to then gain those people outside your office, or else you tend to only then know your office nucleus. And if you have a question that needs to be directed to somebody outside the office, you may not have that network built up, and you may not even be realizing you're building that network.
Exactly. Now, I'm not telling you to share all your trade secrets, but there's certain things you need to talk to people outside of your office about.
Yeah. No, I've definitely hit that in my career, and just, you get your gut checks elsewhere. Or better ways to do business, because architects tend to not be the best business professionals. So I'd rather go to a finance or accountant person, sales.
Exactly. I tell people architects are terrible business people some days. Terrible.
Yeah. We can go help people and, bring people together and want to do great work. But sometimes when it comes to the finances, go get expert advice from somebody that'll push you to be uncomfortable. But
exactly.
And so I know you're jumping into the organizations. I know you're currently the TxA President. So what are you doing this year? We're more than halfway through the year, on the back half. So what are you doing over there?
It's been good. And I guess it's been humbling. We have a great organization with the Texas Society of Architects. And sometimes I know this is being broadcast through a national audience. But sometimes people forget that the Texas Society of Architects is actually a component of the AIA. We just chose and we elected to keep our name. And so we are the state component for the AIA for the state of Texas. And we have just had about 8,000 members that we oversee, the third largest component of the AIA. But we have a great membership, and we've been able to really reshape the organization over the past 4 years. And it was nothing to say that it was anything wrong with the old TxA, but the new TxA is very forward-thinking, forward-moving. And I think it really speaks to our current generation and a lot of things that are important to the generations to come. Of course, we really focus upon advocacy, and that's always been a passion for me, is really advocating for professionals at the state and international level, and with our primary focus being on the state level. And I've seen to where over the past 4 years, I've been involved with the organization either as a VP or president-elect for the past 4 years, is that we've really been able to really shape how we do advocacy on the state level at a higher level. And we continue to advance that forward. So that's one of the things that I'm extremely proud of. Also, I'm appreciative of the way that we have reshaped the way that we engage our volunteers at the state level. I would say that, we all have jobs, we have families, and trying to be involved with our organization can be somewhat challenging and daunting. We have an excellent staff at TxA that helps to carry a lot of that burden and a lot of the work from day to day, so that we can continue to do our work and help to really advise and coach upon how TxA moves forward as an organization. And so, again, I can't take all the credit for that, but what I can tell you is that I've been able to carry that work forward throughout this year and continue to advance the way that TxA serves our members in the state.
Yeah. So TxA is for the whole state. So even though you're situated in Dallas, and it's a giant state, so how are you bringing everybody together when, driving across the state of Texas? I think driving across Pennsylvania is a long trek, but it's nothing on Texas.
Yeah, it's pretty daunting. I mean, you imagine that, some of our members in the most, I want to say remote, but distant is probably a better word, parts of Texas, we're separated by 16 to 18-hour drive. That's pretty amazing. But, we have a board that is represented by all of our chapters. And so we have members as far as, Abilene and El Paso and the LRGV, which is Lower Rio Grande Valley, down there on Corpus Christi and Laredo. And so we have those members represented on our board. So they bring their collective voices of their chapters to our board meetings, and they sit on our commissions, they sit on our committees. And we are very, very deliberate when we're developing our committees on reaching out to our members across the state and getting representation from the unique voices, because everybody's challenges are different. You may not think so, we're in the same state, but the challenges they're seeing down in the valley are very different from what we're seeing in North Dallas. And understanding what those unique conditions are, helps us to better address the state as a whole.
Yeah, because I know I've got family and friends in, I think, 8 different cities in Texas. Most of them are the east side, but even those are all very different from each other and what's going on in the different communities.
Exactly.
Now, as somebody who's not in Texas, what was the big change over the last 4 years? Like, what was TxA doing 4 years ago versus today?
I would say that the old TxA was very much, the initiatives were driven by staff leadership. And that may sound, and I'm trying to figure out how to really phrase this the right way. Staff leadership was one. The second thing I would say that is that our board has become incredibly diverse. Age, geographic region, sex, from a variety of ways, which is very good. We hear those unique voices. And, I don't share this very often, but, one of the simple facts is, with the organization being over 80 years old, I'm the first African American president for the organization ever. And, hopefully people can see that, I'm here on my own merit. It's because of the work that I've put into the organization and the Institute and our profession over the past 24 years is why I sit here today in this position. And I'm passionate about the work that TxA has done. But there's others out there who have the ability to sit in the seat and seats similar to this, that we're working towards really bringing those silent voices, those underserved parts of our membership to the forefront to make our organization better by bringing them into the fold. So I think that's one big thing. But we've had a great board or a great group of volunteers, a great staff that's allowed us to really advance that forward.
Yeah. And I know I've talked to a number of people of different chapters around the states, and it's oftentimes you get similar voices. The people that show up all the time are the ones that, get heard, but it's what about all the other members that, either don't have the transit to get to an event or have their own family issues or different time zones if states are split up and just have challenges getting involved but want to be, and how the organization can change if you can get those quiet voices in there.
And that's a simple thing, right, that we did, right? So, before, all of our committee meetings were in person in Austin. And, blaming on COVID, but actually, being able to we require our committees to meet once a year in person. The other meetings are held virtually, which allows people with families, people that have to travel long distance to be able to be a little bit more engaged, because we've breaking down those barriers to allow them to do that.
Yeah. And help with workload too, because I know sometimes people have to take PTO if they're traveling to help out with different organizations, have to take time away from work. So that's a game changer, just having most of them be virtual. Yeah. So
hopefully we can shift that narrative. Hopefully we can shift the narrative that where firms see the benefit of their members being involved and allowing them, not requiring them to take PTO in order to be engaged. And that's a separate discussion in itself. I did build out there that I'm challenging firms that, your members or your employees being involved and engaged is a good thing. And so I would hope that they will support them to a degree.
Yeah, because it's also giving back to the community, like how we started our discussion. So, being involved no matter what type of organization it is, if something comes up, it's helping the community at large. You never know who they're going to be helping out or who's going to be around doing a BD approach. You never know where your next client's going to come from in those relationships, or your next all-star hire. You are going to meet people all around, and just giving back is important.
Most definitely.
And I know you were also in the past NOMA president. So what did you do over at NOMA during your presidency?
So I was the president of Dallas NOMA early in my career. We had a very small group of minority professionals within Dallas that I helped to lead in the late 2009, 2010, and all that. And this is where you have to humble yourself, right? I was young in my leadership, and I think I did enough with the organization. However, but what I'm amazed at, though, is when I look at DFW NOMA now, compared to where I had it when I was back in 2009 as a president, the organization has grown leaps and bounds because of the current leadership. It's about engaging and bringing in the fold their peers into the organization and really activating the organization, which I'm proud of them. Even though I can't say that I did it, I'm very proud of where they have taken the organization. I was able to hold the organization together with a very limited number of members, but as far as what they have done to date, I think they're the largest or second largest chapter of NOMA in the southern region, which encompasses about 8 states. And so I really, they're well over 100 and something, I think approaching 200 somewhere in there members, which is amazing because I couldn't even thinking about, when I moved to Dallas, seeing 100 people of color
Uh-huh.
in the profession. And so it's a great thing.
Yeah, I've attended some NOMA events here in Pittsburgh, and I was fortunate to join one of their events where they really celebrated from the start of their membership and had the very first NOMA president on there, and seeing how the membership started. And I think it started with 3 members.
Yeah.
And just seeing how it grew and just having that consistency on somebody keeping it going. And now they're very active doing a multitude of things, and has a very, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head for our NOMA chapter, but it was humbling to be in the room and meeting some of the professionals that got it started. So at least you didn't make it stop. And I think that's the important part, because, some organizations or even committees within organizations, if they don't have that person keeping it going, it can all kind of stop if you don't have that leadership to keep it.
And most definitely.
Are there any other organizations you're involved in for your community?
Yeah, so I started a stint on I've always been engaged civically. And so I did serve a stint on the City of Duncanville Economic Development Corporation. I served as the vice chair of that organization for a number of years. So I was able to leverage my expertise in the architecture profession to help continue to provide incentives and bring positive development to the community. I've served on the Board of Adjustments. I serve on the Dallas Arboretum Board currently as well. Also, I've served on nonprofit Junior Players, which is the oldest children's theater in the city of Dallas. I don't know, I get sucked into these things sometimes, but it's all good. I don't do it unless I really want to do it, and I think it's a great organization. So it gives me an opportunity to really give back. I would say that my focus right now is primarily on TxA, AIA, and our firm and my family right now, which is more than enough. I did, and so this is another fun fact. So this past spring, I did run for city council for an unfinished term of 1 year. I fell short in that particular election, but it doesn't say I'm not going to run again in the future.
Yeah, you never know. I know an architect that's a governor of a smaller town than Pittsburgh. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I know him. You never know.
Very much so.
So I know you mentioned balancing family work and AIA as president. They all they're big things to pull you in different directions. What is working for you to balance all of that?
Well, first and foremost, balance is a myth. There is no such thing as balance. There is absolutely no such thing as balance. And the way I heard it explained to me is former city councilwoman Angela Hunt for the city of Dallas explained it this way. It's like you have all these balls up in the air, and you're juggling these balls. And there are going to be days that you drop 2 or 3 of them. And so there's going to be a day in a week that I'm going to be a great dad. However, I'm only at 70% at work because I'm being a great dad that particular day, because that's all the energy I have to put into it. There's a day that I'm being a great president for TxA, and the days that I just suck. I am not doing what I need to do. And so the thing is, you don't let all the balls drop at one time, but you just can't be at 100% at everything every single day. There's no such thing as balance. It's just that some days unless you're doing absolutely nothing. If you're doing absolutely nothing, just bare minimum, then maybe you're being great at everything. But when you're doing all these things, some days you're good at it, some days you're better at it, and some days you're making it through.
Yeah, I always explain it to leaning, like how you lean on your right foot or left foot, and there are days that you're going to rely on one side of your body or one arm or one item. But I think it's also important that you are still involved in a multitude of other things, but understanding what are the top 3 that you're prioritizing at the current moment, because TxA President takes a lot of time. And I'm sure once you're done with that, then it's okay. The balls get reevaluated. It's like you'll still be involved with the AIA, but that ball's going to get a little bit smaller, a little bit easier to handle as you juggle them.
Very much so.
And then I always like wrapping up my podcast with this final question. And it's, what advice do you have for young professionals just starting their career?
It's a great question. I think a couple of things. I've touched upon some of them already this evening. It's like, find the right fit, the right firm. And I would say just go after your passion. This industry and the knowledge isn't going to come to you. You have to go and seek it out. I remember as a young architect or a young intern, sitting in my boss's office, because sometimes you can only grab that time after hours. I would stay after work sometimes and just go sit down with them and just talk about the things that were important that I thought that I couldn't get during the day. Sometimes it takes a little bit up and beyond what you would expect to be my average job duties in order to really advance. And, if I had to say one last thing, it's just find a place that you have people that you enjoy being around. You probably spend more time at your company than you spend with the people in your home. And so you got to be passionate. You got to love. And if you don't love coming to work every single day, then you may want to reevaluate, what you're doing.
Yeah. Do you have any, to take it a bit further, do you have any tips on going that like next step in your learning? Was there anything that like beyond, staying late and sitting with your boss, or things you've worked on to help teach people in your office?
I would say be inquisitive. I like the air hustle. I think we got into a climate in the offices where everybody wears earphones. But I will tell you, I have learned so much in my career by just what I call air hustling. Mm-hmm. I am listening to what my colleagues are going through. And I was like, I'm not going to go through that same thing. I am learning from your mistakes, right? And so you just got to be a sponge and just soak up everything around you and take every opportunity to just learn from others. Whether you seek it out personally by asking questions or by just learning from just listening in. And if somebody said, well, come join me at this job site meeting, go, Mm-hmm. If you have the opportunity to go towards something and really look at something with a colleague, go. Even if it's on your personal time. But it's just learn from the lessons learned. Let others make mistakes. You learn from them.
Yeah. Because then they'll learn from yours.
Yeah, you learn from yours, but learn from others as well.
Yeah, because I always tell people you got to find that camaraderie like within the office. And it's not as much about similar interests. It's more about like you are all in the mess together and you get through it together and get out. And for those that, if one team's in a mess, somebody else on another team may be able to help pull the team out. And then you may be there to help their team down the road. And those challenges and people coming together as a firm to teach and help people through challenges is what really builds that community connection within the office that you spoke about as your last tip. So, but finding the right fit, right firm is always a challenge. But if anybody would want to get a hold of you, has any questions on TxA or KAI, or wants to learn more about getting involved or have mentorship questions, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
I'll give two things. I'll give you my email address.
You don't have to.
Yeah, I feel free to email me, but it's my first name, Derwin, DERWIN, Broughton, my last name, BROUGHTON, at K as in Kappa, A as in Alpha, I as in Iodine, so KAI -DB, like my initials, but it says design build, but it's db.com. So Derwin.Broughton at ki-db.com, or send me a text, 972-571-4740. And I repeat it as well in my voicemails. I leave a voicemail. So again, that number was 972-571-4740.
We indeed had this podcast over virtual and not via phone. Just for anybody listening, because to them it sounds like a phone voicemail. But no, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me, Derwin. I know you are very busy running around doing so many things. And I know I learned a lot today by talking to you. So thank you again.
Oh, I appreciate it, Caitlin. Thank you for the invitation.
I hope you enjoyed our discussion today. Learn some advice to take with you and see how our industry is all tied together to create the world around us. Check out the description below for any links or resources we discussed. If you liked the episode, please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. Give me a thumbs up and leave a comment below. It really helps others be able to discover this resource and support finding that career path that best works for them. If you know someone that has inspired your own career that you'd like me to interview, let me know in the comments below, or you can reach out to me via my website or LinkedIn. I'd be happy to share their story or your own. Thank you again, and I cannot wait for the next career story I get to share with you next week.